Good evening. My name is Robert Kennedy, and I'm here to speak about what a college education buys. The first person I'm going to talk about referring to an article is Christopher Caldwell. He worked at the Washington Post, Atlantic Monthly, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Slate and Online Magazine. He also created a book called Reflections on the Revolution in Europe, Immigration, Islam, and the West. Charles Murray created, also worked in the Wall Street Journal. He has a three-part series about No Child Left Behind, which is implemented by President George Bush. And he argued that theory, although I believe myself that everybody should have a chance to go to college. It's one of those things where education is one of the things that we should be able to have, no matter what the cost is. But he argued that the educators need to try harder, and that was the thing back then. But not all children have the intellectual capacity to learn. Some children just don't have the intellectual capacity, so that means they can't learn as well as some of the other students there. So closer to 15% than 45% master the most challenging classes in college. So that's like 15 out of 100 instead of 45 out of 100. So what that's saying is there's a difference between half the students mastering college classes than only 15 out of 100. That's a big difference. So Charles Murray does have a point if he's got some facts to stand that up. There's also some non-educational uses of college. They can be the best marriage brokers, so it could be the best place to meet that wife or husband and spend the rest of your life with. So with that being said, it could be a good place where you could have a beautiful wedding in a place like Hawaii, where I live. And we got the palm trees, the beach, the dream wedding, beautiful blue water. And it's just a great way to have a wedding or possibly meet somebody in that 4 years that you're there. It also increases your socialization skills a lot of the times. If you don't spend too much time on studying, of course. But it's like having 4 years of leisure time instead of being at the end of the prime of your high school years where you graduate high school, either go in the military, work for a little bit, get a job, or go to college. So it kind of makes things a little nicer in life if you go to school, and at least in my instance, it did. I ended up going to the military first, but I'll never forget those years in school, especially at Ohio State. There's actually a YouTube video, The Ohio State University, the castle I lived in. There, we had a great time going to all the football games, met a lot of friends for life. And the biggest thing about that kind of a thing with a fraternity or a sorority is networking, because I'm in the largest fraternity in the world. We have the most alumni, active members. And what that states is when we're going out in the job world, we need to network with people to get that career. I have that on my resume. It might help a little bit if somebody there has been in the same fraternity. One of the presidents was actually in my fraternity, and he actually came to visit. It's in the video about who it was. I'll keep it in suspense. He was the only president, while he was president, to come to our fraternity house. If you don't study too hard and socialize, that's the biggest thing about the non-educational uses. The price of college, that's another big thing on everybody's mind. About 25 years ago, the top Ivy League schools were only about 10 grand. Now they're up to 180,000 for a 4-year degree. That's a big difference. But the difference is there were fewer applications, and that's the biggest thing, because if you have fewer applications and you have more applications, they're going to raise the price. It's simple economics. More demand, they're going to raise the price. Um, More money, the results of education make things more visible. So that's what most students look at, the difference between a high school graduate, college graduate. Frank Levy and Richard Murnane actually did a study, and they stated that a 30-year-old college grad in 1979 made about 17% more than a college grad made about 17% more than a high school grad. So that's a big difference. But here's the thing. That's not really a big difference because present day it's a 50% increase. So you're basically saying, well, if this guy's making 30 a year doing this job or this career, and I'm a college grad, I'm gonna make 50% more, so I'm making 45 a year. That's 50% of 30, and that's not a big increase, but 50% over your lifetime adds up. Um, they also argued about how people get educated in America. So some go to college to get it civilized. Um, I guess you learn more and you become more educated, so you're civilized. Guessing what that meaning is. Most get qualified for a career like me. I got out of the military and I didn't expect to get out. I was honorably discharged, but I had some injuries, so I didn't expect to get out right away. And so, with that being said, I had to think about what I'm going to do for my career because the military is going to be my career. So what I did is I went back to school and I still work for them as a civilian usually, on base or the VA or one of them. I've worked with the Department of Defense, both of them, but I still stay federal government. Um, but parents, that's what they think it's for is a career. But there's lots of majors that are hard to find employment. So they might sit at the dinner table and argue about how much money they're spending for a career that their child might not get a job in when they graduate. So that's the biggest thing about picking a major. So you always want to be employable when you get out. That's the biggest thing. I know when I was a senior at the Ohio State University, I took a job with the federal government because most students that were getting out weren't getting jobs. A lot of us stayed in school to get the master's degree because there was no jobs back then. But I got lucky, and then I ended up finishing out. I graduated with honors. There's my little picture over there. I'm all proud. And so it was a great experience, and I'll never forget it. That was my shoes. Then I went straight on to my master's and finished that, and now I'm working on my doctorate at terminal degree. So college degree is a signaling device. There's not that the learner has learned, but can learn. That's an interesting phrase to remember because college is saying, in their words, that the learner has learned, but they also can learn because intellectual capacity, once again. And here's another thing colleges don't increase a worker's productivity. See, effectiveness plus efficiency equals productivity, as the picture states. Um, there is a lot of things surrounding that, but at least they make the the employee effective because they have the education to possibly do that career. But the efficiency is the key. They want to get production, and that's how the companies make money. If there's no production, no money. So there's a great way to increase production if every employer would kind of instill this. It's called Lean Sigma Six. I've taken it myself when I was working at Coronado at one time. That's in Southern California, on base there. And basically, what it is it's a way to trim fat and make things more efficient and make things more productive in your department. So you take some classes. They started a white belt, yellow belt. I think there's a green belt, and if you're a black belt, and it goes up through just kind of like the martial arts, but it's a different way of having efficiency in departments. It's called Lean Sigma Six. It's great to have for that company to be more efficient and lead to more productivity. There's a generic productivity that can be compared from accounting class to medieval history. So that kind of not understanding that they're comparing accounting to medieval history because it's generic productivity. Um, what that means to me is it's generic and the productivity is no different from now than then. That's what I'm seeing in that. Um, it does help the employers find the most productive employee though. In the long run, if they learn their job effectively and they have the education to do it, they're going to be more productive than the regular person that doesn't have the college education. The benefits of diligent study is overrated. So if you're becoming a doctor to save lives out there, then yeah, go ahead and study for 12 years, do your residency and all that kind of stuff. And you got to work hard because you're going to be specializing in something. and you know you're going to have a good career when you're done. But on the other hand, it's best not to specialize because the employer may want you in a regular job. They may want you to be more flexible. So you got to put yourself in different people's shoes in your department or other departments to kind of fill in and be more flexible to help that employer be more productive. So we want to be more well-rounded. A big reward of today's education is intelligence deployable, new direction on short notice. So you got to be able to do different jobs, take on different hats within a short notice, and still help the company be successful. And just don't get locked into a single marketable skill because you're more locked into one thing and you might not be able to expand your horizons into something else if you don't have more marketable skills than just one. The future of college education. Can college be more accessible? Well, I think it's pretty accessible. Most students can go to college nowadays. You don't have to have like a 4.0 to get in college, go in the military, and there's a lot of ways to help pay for it also. And some parents don't have $180,000 sitting in their bank account to pay for a kid's Ivy League school. But there's other schools you don't have to pay that much for, and they're still accredited. And sometimes it's just a piece of paper to get that interview to get your foot in the door. That's the way I look at it. So will a college degree be as valuable? So that's what I was just stating. Will it be as valuable because we have so many college graduates? It's almost being like a high school graduate and comparing with high school students as a bachelor degree. Like a bachelor is like a diploma in a high school. A master's is almost like a bachelor's nowadays because there's so many candidates applying for the same jobs and careers. Simple economics means more qualified employees, so they're going to take less salary sometimes. Like say they have a master's degree and they're taking less salary just because there's so much competition because there's so many other qualified employees. Simple economics. As demand goes down, as supply goes up. So the price goes down, the supply goes up. There's another interesting term called formation. So it's increased specialization. It's bought at a price of flexibility and a breadth of knowledge. So you got to be flexible and have that breadth of knowledge. And that's kind of what formation talks about. Is a college education worth it? Well, you decide about what we just talked about. Can we really have a rewarding career with a college education? No. We'll find out once we get that career when we graduate, right? Um, Lastly, I want to speak about paraphrasing, summarizing, and quoting. That's using when we're citing different authors, writing papers, especially in doctorate school and graduate school. I'm currently working on my doctorate, and we write a lot of papers, so it's important that we cite the authors and make sure we don't use plagiarism. So one of the best ways I think is paraphrasing, and that's when we transfer our own words but keep the original author's meaning. So we're not taking the meaning from the article, but we're putting it in our own words so we understand it, and it makes it, in my experience, it makes us more knowledgeable of the subject, and it makes us understand it better. Summarization is a boils down to essence, something larger to smaller. So you got a 300-400 page article you're summarizing. All we do is take the key points, skim through, take the key points, maybe take it down to 10 or 20 to summarize it and make it easy. Do a lot of summarization in law school. Went to law school one time, and we do a lot of case briefs. So you might have a really big case, and we just sum it down to a lot smaller facts, and just keep the facts and just keep it small. Another thing is quoting, and this is very important that we once again we properly use citation because we're using exact words from the original author. We put it in quotes and we quote them. We're using APA, which is the American Psychological Association. And what that is, it's just a way to cite in a different way. There's MLA also. But we don't want to change the meaning from the sentence, and sometimes we have to use exact quotes because it'll change the meaning if we put it in our own words. I'm going to host up the references real quick. It's so I don't get caught plagiarizing. Most of my material was from Mr. Spat's textbook, Writing from Sources, and all the other ones are used from the pictures I've used in this presentation. Okay, thank you, and have a good night.